Welcome, 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 everybody. This is Chess and Chat. Today, we will be live with a very special guest and some surprises. We did have some technical difficulties last time. I don't expect we will have them this time, and we'll go through with a lot of things, including some announcements. Today, I am very, very excited to bring on Richard Parris, the co-founder of Saito Network. And without further ado, I'm bringing him up right here. Hello, Richard. How are you?
Hey, Lucas. Good to be here. Very well. Thank you.
So last time we tried this, it worked very, very, very well, I gotta say, until it didn't. So today we'll start over. We'll dive back into the conversation. We'll talk a little bit about your personal background. We'll talk about what Saito is. We'll talk about the tech landscape, blockchain landscape, sort of in general. And then we'll also have some surprises planned, I believe. So I'm looking forward to that. Some live demos. You know, we did it last time and went wrong. It definitely won't go wrong this time. And this time, actually, the pressure is more on you than on me. So we'll see how that goes. Well, very warm welcome. Happy New Year. How are you?
Good. So yeah, it's been a busy time mixing sort of family and New Year's with the ever present and continuous work with Saito, but really well, thanks. It's good to be getting back to this.
Amazing. So I usually start with this, and we had an interesting discussion that we started last time about people's backgrounds. And yours is quite interesting. It's not like a typical tech background, although it involves a lot of math and logic. But you started as a philosophy major. So tell us a little bit about, how you got started, and then sort of what first got you into blockchain and all of these formal logic systems.
Yeah, it's an interesting path. Makes sense if you've walked it, but may not seem obvious to people, I suppose, from the outside. But I ended up at college. I dropped one subject every year, and it was always a subject I'd done best in the previous year, which I think gives you an indication of my mindset. I was like, I want to find what I don't understand, what's really hard. And what was really hard, or what was at the root of things for me in the end, was mathematics and philosophy, and that philosophical edge of mathematics and vice versa. So kind of number theory and formal logic. How do things even make sense? Like, And of course, if you study that for long enough, you then end up having to go out into the world, either continue it forever or go out into the world and find a job. And that's how I got into tech. And it's actually a really solid background for tech career, because although you kind of start off on the back foot, you're like, well, I'm not a great Python programmer or whatever. It was Java back then. It was kind of the most desired corporate programming language. On the other hand, you've got all the tools you need to learn those things quickly. So you've got, I mean, I had a lot of comp-sci classmates. So they were doing courses with me, but they were doing it for the comp-sci side, and I was doing it for the maths and philosophy side. And so it did provide, you know, a lot of the background for that, but it also left me generally always looking at any given system and thinking about it in terms of like, let's break this down to its primary pieces and think about how it's working, what it's doing, because that's where I was going to get an advantage. It'd be useful, right? So in a team or whatever, that's what I was going to bring. And so I always kind of had that attitude, or that take when I was working with systems and tech. Got some really mundane developing jobs out of college, turned those into a tech career, part of which involved moving to Beijing in 2007, which was really very fortuitous because I actually kind of first heard about Bitcoin through the Beijing Linux user group. So early days in Beijing, and at that time, like sort of 2010, like Beijing was really heavy globally in terms of the number of sort of the uptake of Bitcoin, etc. It seems weird now with all sort of China having locked down a lot of crypto stuff, but almost completely. At the time, they were letting it run. They were saying, "Well, let's see where this goes. Let's see where this new, financial system takes us." However they consider it. It's classic Chinese regulation. They let it exist in a dark gray area for a while, and then as they see what it's going to be, they start making rules to push it to where they want. 2010, 2011, 2012, I wasn't very involved. I was hearing things about people, see, I should go to a Bitcoin meetup or whatever. Got kind of more seriously involved, partially through David, my co-founder, in 2013. Actually bought some Bitcoin and stuff like that and started using it and started trying to build things. So David was trying to, it was similar to me working in tech in Beijing, had his own firm. And we were interested in, like, could you do purchasing with it? Like, how could you do a simple thing like tipping someone or buying a hamburger or whatever? And he'd often just send me a link and say, "Can you test this out?" Like, and
what were the amounts of Bitcoin you were moving back then?
We used to play poker for I think 0.1 Bitcoin. Like that was the ante.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's like you 10, 20 grand to see the river. Back then, it wasn't that much then. It was nothing. But we used to use those open dimes. Don't know if you remember. Do you remember open dimes? They were like a one-off. Like they're private and public key on a little USB stick, so you could just charge them up, or they came even with like 0.1 or 1 Bitcoin on whatever, and you just gave them to people. Anyway, that was what the scene was like. People were experimenting. We're trying to find anything we could do with it, do useful things. So yeah, I mean, there's a server somewhere where I don't know if there's still any Bitcoin on it, but I bought a hamburger when Bitcoin was $100 or something. So whatever, if that Bitcoin's still on there, it's like it's a fair bit now, but more than a hamburger.
Not quite as much as the pizza, I assume, but yeah, substantial.
Nothing like that
in today's.
Nothing like that. But for a while I was using Bitcoin to pay my Australian credit card because it was just such a hassle to get money wired from China to Australia. So the exchange I was with in Australia, I put through a huge amount of Bitcoin because I was paying regular bills back then when Bitcoin was not worth that much.
That's actually super interesting that there was like a real use case for Bitcoin that was applicable for people living overseas and then really being able to move money sort of instantly or at least faster.
Yeah, I mean, I come with a really Chinese and a really Asian perspective on the crypto scene and the money side of it. I remember going to Consensus in Singapore, and someone from a New York group was mentioning kind of the flows that they were seeing, and like, and I was thinking that's chump change compared to what I know the Chinese exchanges are doing. And it was partially because I think at all levels, right? For everyday folk, the banking system back then was was trash. And before they had digital payments through things like WeChat, it really was bad. Now, arguably, there's less reason for non-crypto-minded people to want crypto in China because it's so advanced with the payments and so forth. It also has advanced problems you might want to avoid. But yeah, so that was really, it was interesting. And it was all the way from the ordinary person all the way through the state. You know, the Chinese government was looking at Bitcoin saying, well, if this thing smashes up the international banking system, whatever we're left with is going to be more Chinese than what we have now. And for the Chinese, that's a great result. So they were not, you know, they were not against it until it was kind of evident that they couldn't control it in ways that, you know, meant both on the side of like they couldn't stop scams, etc., and China's rife for get rich quick schemes and stuff like that. So partially it was sort of public, you know, protecting people from that sort of thing, but then also they couldn't control capital outflows and other things that they wanted to keep, you know, under their control. So until it was sort of unmanageable, Bitcoin was not supported, but definitely let go, and anything innovative was definitely encouraged. So it was very easy back then in Beijing to, you know, for people to start up remittance companies or whatever. And so, yeah, I actually knew people using Bitcoin regularly, including me, 2014, 2015, because it was just a convenient way to do things. And I was also fortunate. I had a jurisdiction, you know, I had friends in other jurisdictions who had all their accounts locked up, etc., because they were living in wherever, Canada or US or somewhere, and they were flagged. Whereas in Australia, it was always permitted. So that was, you know, it was connected to my bank. It made it really easy.
Let's go from there, and that's super interesting. I mean, like, obviously a true OG sort of in the community. Linux, of course, I'm not surprised at all that that's sort of the path for any proper nerd to then also find those computational systems. But then, like, what sort of problems did you find with Bitcoin? Where did you like see things evolve or not evolve enough to then say, wait, we also need to sort of like contribute to the space? How did you start contributing? Did you always, you know, start out like with the idea of like, I need to fix this from the ground up and build my own thing? Or was there something where you first got involved in a substantial way and then jumped into Saito and the development of that?
It's a really good question. And I made some offhand comment to David, I think it was on a call the other day, of like sort of back when ideas mattered in crypto, right? Because it's very hard to like, well, it's very easy to forget the difference. Back then, you know, nobody assumed anything. Like this was all just ideas. It was all just, let's see what happens. Let's build things. Let's try stuff. And so you didn't have a sense of like, now people expect stuff to work or they expect things to happen. But it was really clear that, well, you had to participate. You had to be part of it. It wasn't going to happen without you. So people didn't expect the kind of Bitcoin or whatever there was at the time, early Ethereum, to give them anything. It was much more the other way around. It's like, how am I going to contribute? And so that's why I helped, like with, you know, David had more time just where we were with our businesses at that point. And so he was doing this experimenting. He was using Bitcoin J and stuff to try and set up like I think it was a platform called Lighthouse at the time to do Bitcoin payments and just see. And he was running a SaaS product in China that needed international payments, so something other than, you know, other than credit cards was going to be a blessing for him. And I think we had those kind of ideas. Well, maybe this would work, maybe that would work. You're also living with constant censorship, so we were also very aware of like, you know, could you VPN with this? Could you send at least messages with it? It's much more on your mind when the internet's, you know, being fucked with all the time and you can't like just use it how you want. And so we had that. We had that kind of to and fro, so it just felt normal that you would be involved in that way. Similarly, it's the attitude you have with Linux, which is, it doesn't work, you need to help fix it. You don't complain to Linux. You know, you don't.
My dad is a huge Linux guy, so I've been like on the sort of receiving end of all the stuff. He, to this day,
the doctrine.
he actually, like, he installed, like, my grandfather is now 93, and all of my grandfather's programs at their old folks home in Hamburg run on Linux, meaning that the printer will not work for literal weeks until my dad can come over again and figor out what the problem is.
So
but yeah,
printers work.
You know, with certain OSs they do. But yeah, I think that's such an interesting thing. This idea of like really a contributor idea rather than somebody who's just like a consumer or an observer or anything. You really had to go in and make things work yourself. It's the open source sort of idea, right? So yeah, sorry
Right.
to interrupt
It,
there.
it really felt like a movement, and it felt like, well, people were interested in like getting a job, right? It seemed like an interesting movement because maybe you could actually build something that people would use. You could start a business. You could be involved in a way that was like professional, or at least paying the bills. But it still felt very much like a movement, and so people were looking at it early on and just saying, well, people like me were trying to grapple with, well, what is it? In the way I was saying before, you're like looking at the pieces, thinking, is it a network? Is it just money? Like, what does it actually do? How does the world change with this thing in it? At the same time, you're trying to say, well, can I send a payment? Can I send someone $1? And like, could we build UIs that will stand up, right? Like, and back then, there was a lot of, you know, maybe seed phrases, but there was a lot of manually entering stuff, and sometimes having to go and find out online how to build a transaction and paste it into something. And so you could see, well, like, obviously we could make that better, and if we want my grandma to use this, we're going to have to improve this and that. And there was generally a sort of sense that it was a movement and we're all coming together to do that. As that was happening, that hit front on the then needs of a network like that to actually achieve these things. So like the immediate thing is, back in the day, people were starting to say very quickly, oh, Visa does X. That's where the sort of transactions per second mentality comes from, right? Visa does X transactions per second. So can we? And that was the idea, was can we, not can Bitcoin, but can we? And that's where you started to get this dissatisfaction, and then the block size wars around, which is really interesting exercise, both in how do communities work with these, shared entities that, questions of governance and that sort of thing. What is it? What happens if we just copy it? That sort of stuff. Like people had to learn how to live with that, as well as then the technical questions of like, how do you actually build it out to be suitable to be a payment mechanism or whatever. And we've seen those narratives then change between, oh, well, actually, maybe it's just digital gold because it's useless for transactions, right? And
Yeah.
it's clear that Bitcoin just isn't cash. Like the white paper says peer-to-peer electronic cash, but there's no way logically of using Bitcoin as cash. I still do belligerently occasionally because I might have Bitcoin and I'm like buying a domain name or something and I can pay in Bitcoin, and I do, but I probably pay 3 times what I need to and wait too long because it's just not very good at it, right? Yeah. And so that's that sort of started becoming a reality, and so it was also a lived reality. It was like people were arguing about this, but they weren't just arguing about it because like they were trying to push it one roadmap agenda or another. They're actually pushing it because they thought, I want this to work, and if it's going to work, then it needs to do A, B, and C. And I think what we saw was this splitting. The focus was on block size, but what it really came down to was ideology around it's okay to be a volunteer network, right? And the way that expressed itself was people wanted to be able to run Bitcoin on a Raspberry Pi at home, which meant domestic hardware, domestic connection had to be able to run Bitcoin, right? Obviously not Solana. And so that was one camp, and then the other camp was like, well, it's not too bad if it ends up being in data centers, just so long as it's a lot of data centers and they're not all the same people running everything. But if we want anything that's genuinely capable, we're going to have to go that way. That's simplifying it, but that was really at the heart of the discussion. And then that also came into other questions of like, well, who gets to make these decisions and how are they made? Because that wasn't decided either. Satoshi didn't say there will be a council of elders or Jedi or anything that will make these decisions. It was just there, right? So people had to work out the realities of what happens if you fork, which we've seen twice in a major way. And it was good being in China because you got to see things like Jack Liao's Bitcoin Gold, where he just realized you could just fork this thing anyway. And so I think he had GPU miners, so he forked the Bitcoin blockchain onto a slightly different algorithm so that he could mine it, basically.
Yeah.
And just did that. And that was really educational, because I think for a lot of people, when they thought about forks and things, they hadn't seen it. They hadn't been aware that had happened. Whereas, sort of been to the pub with a guy who tries a stunt like that, and you kind of think, okay, 51% attacks are real, forks are real, and you get that kind of that sense that maybe is really lost on people today, where they can't sort of contemplate that, because everything is a website that they got a link to from Twitter somewhere, and that's the reality. But yeah, we sort of started to just see like the reality of the rubber hitting the road in terms of, if you actually want to use this thing, what happens. And there've been various recursions of that. So like obviously 2017, suddenly, ETH transactions were costing $1,000 or whatever, and you had the same sort of problem again. But I think that what we saw in Beijing was camps forming, and people who'd previously been playing poker together for their 0.1 Bitcoin stakes or whatever it was, were now starting to throw rocks at each other, and it was becoming a shouting match. And David and I were in this killer WeChat group, which had at various times, everyone from Adam Back was in there, Vitalik was in there, Craig Wright was in there, Starshu and the other guys, I think they were in there from the different exchanges. CZ was certainly in there. And it was like, it's limited to 500 people. So you're in this WeChat group, and people are having this full-on war. I have G Wuhan from Bitmain was in there. So it was like these people that was where the discussion was happening, which was a brilliant thing to get to see. And what you kind of got the sense of from all of that was, you could see these sort of political tensions and various things in the space. It wasn't just about the tech or anything. And one of the things that happened, and how David and I kind of got to know each other better in the blockchain space, was, I think he was more vocal about it, but both of us were. I was receptive to what he was saying because he was being more vocal, but that it's a design problem. It's about blockchain design. It's not about. It's not a technical question of like, how do we squeeze this harder? It's a question of, you're not paying for things you need. Mm-hmm. Right, so you're not paying for all this stuff to be routed everywhere. You're not paying for the infrastructure. It's a volunteer network, and you're not paying for it. You don't want it to become a corporate network, because they're going to have to make their money some other way, and that's going to end up badly. So you don't want that to happen, but then you're stuck with the volunteer version, and the volunteer version does 3 transactions per second.
Right.
You got to solve this problem, which didn't go down well with either side, because everybody who wasn't in the trench with you was someone for rocks. So that was an interesting experience. But I've still got really great friends in what was the BCH community and some of the BSV community, as well as some of the small blockers from around, because it was sort of there was a time when they weren't these weird kind of camps of people who really just like each other.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, like going back, and it's crazy, because this wasn't that long ago. If you think about it, by any means, it seems like such a different historical era altogether. But some very, very interesting discussions, and some very, very different results and approaches that I think are still sort of competing for mind share and for obviously market share as well. But then from all of those discussions, you mentioned some of the sort of foundational thoughts that make Saito what it is, but talk about like the foundational ideas, what you took away from these conversations to then come up with like, this is how it should work for reason XYZ.
So yeah, I mean, the germ of that idea was David. So he'd seen and convinced me early on that it was an economic question. It was about one way to look at it is the difference between Bitcoin and the tech we had before. The difference between Nakamoto consensus and other things that even you could call blockchains, was to move the money into the network and then to pay for security with that money. And that's different. Nobody had done that before. And that made Bitcoin possible, because you needed to, the lifeblood of what you're getting paid for was, you needed to protect that entity as well. You needed to serve it. Problem is, we were just talking about how, because you're only paying for security, you end up with problems. And that made sense to me very early on, and it just sort of seemed clear. And I think, again, that's that philosophical education and take on things, is saying, well, actually, like, is this true? Not am I going to get distracted by the fact that my friends are small blockers or this dissent? I want decentralization, but it's like, what are we actually getting here? Then David was sort of contracting in Hong Kong and back and forth. He kept sending me questions, which wasn't an abnormal thing. And like the FEM just send me a tech question, back and forth. And then a few months later, he's like, "Oh, I've got a prototype. We're at a friend's wedding in Singapore," and he's like, "I've got a prototype of the blockchain we've been working on." And I was like, "We've been working on a blockchain." I've just been answering his technical problems, but it was the design. It all made sense once I saw what he was showing me. And that was really kind of the birth of Saito. He sent me what was the white paper, which was really a kind of patent application or a white paper or something. It was just a description of what it was. And about
you didn't even know you were working on a blockchain while you were designing the infrastructure for a blockchain, is what you're telling me.
Right, I didn't. And I think actually some of the solutions, this is one of those weird philosophical things. Some of the solutions we have, including cryptographic signatures, came about because David described a problem. If you've got a network of people and they need this information, they can't have that information, and you need to prove this, how would you do it? And because we've been obviously in the blockchain space, I was like, well, everyone would just sign it, right? And he's like, "Oh, you can't do that," and walked off and came back and we worked out a way you could do that. But I wouldn't have said that. If you'd said to me design a blockchain, I would have been concerned about the size of the transaction, what all of that information added to the transaction size. And so I probably wouldn't have suggested it. So it's a kind of funny thing that actually it was probably helpful. David knew I was inclined the right way, but I was ignorantly not realizing I was answering questions, not putting it together. Why are we designing it this way? What are we designing rather? And so we just got like solutions to each piece of the puzzle. And the thing with, if you're designing a mechanism like Saito consensus, you've got this issue where I sort of see it as like a circle or a geodesic dome or something where every piece has to support another piece. So you've got a lot of things where it's like a flow down, like a waterfall of A supports B, B supports C, which is basically what they're saying is A kind of works, but there's a problem. So B fixes that, but that leaves a problem, and C fixes that. And you just keep going down the rabbit hole. It's turtles all the way down. And that's a lot of technical solutions to things generally. And it's okay because at some point that's, you're far enough in that you've basically solved the problem. With a blockchain, the problem is if you don't fix it, if you don't have those things supporting each other perfectly, you end up leaking money. There's ways for people to exploit the mechanism and they can steal, basically. 51% attacks are one way of doing it. There's other majoritarian attacks and there's other ways of gaming the system. Some obvious ones are if you're doing something where like these early places where like proof of storage or something, and then you can obviously just demonstrate you've got empty storage. They've got some cryptographic work to make that hard, but it's just making it hard. And so you can, if the costs and benefits swing into the right place, you can suddenly get $500 for installing a $300 hard disk, and obviously you've got a problem and your chain's not secure. And so that was the big kind of struggle with Saito, was to make that happen in a way that was also going to be efficient enough to do mega amounts of transactions, right? Because you can't do something where it's like, well, yeah, that's great, but it takes 45 minutes to process a transaction, because you've not really solved the problem then.
Right.
So that's kind of the genesis of what we were trying to do. And in some ways it was like a zero compromises approach. We're saying, look, we're not going to put up with anything. Like, people take the 51% attack as a given, but we're not going to. We're going to say there's a way to design blockchains without majoritarian attacks. So that's not proof of work or proof of stake. What is it? Right? And that's the kind of onus behind it. And the idea there is, if you want a system without governance, without police, of some sort, using some external force, whether it's coercion of a physical variety or economic, stopping people from stealing, then you need a system that you can't steal from, right? And that's really the trick to mechanism design. The Bitcoin does that in the sense that it's secure because you've got the security from mining, but it doesn't solve it if you've got enough miners. If you've got more than half the miners, you can start taking all the money.
Right.
You can fork anyone off you like. You can do whatever you like. Same with DPoS or POS or whatever. If you've got voting.
Breakdown for the first timers, because there's going to be a few watching this, rewatching it, and
Yeah.
all of this. Like, what is the Saito consensus model, and how does it really work, and why does it work? And then also, like, try to do that in a minute and a half max, and then we'll talk about sort of the use cases. Break it down
Right.
to elements. We're back to
But basically, the trick is you have to pay for everything the network needs. That's the routing and moving things around in the network, as well as the security function, all those things. The only way to do that is to make the routing the security function, so you're getting more security with more routing. You don't have the trilemma because as you grow, you get more of a security budget. You don't have to take your security budget to do something with it. We do that basically by looking at who contributed to getting transactions into blocks and then rewarding them for doing that. That involves a mechanism with a lottery and other kind of systems to make sure that you can't game that process. You can't inject your own money into the block so that you then get all the money or anything like that. So there's sort of checks and balances to prevent those things from happening. And that's Saito consensus. Basically, when a block is created, you can inspect it. You can see the nodes who contributed to getting that transaction into the block, and you can reward them. It also values starting that process more than finishing it. So if you're out there right next to users getting their transactions, and those transactions are getting into blocks, you're doing the most important thing you can do. You should get the most money for it. So that's the kind of difference in the way Saito logically thinks, rather than I'm the validator or I'm the miner and I'm doing this job and I'm going to get paid in proportion to my work, which is an important principle. But it's saying, well, what work? What exactly do we need to do? And so you have to find a unitary way of measuring that, which is routing work in Saito. And that's basically saying that all of the pieces that go to getting a transaction into a block need to be rewarded. And that's what we look at, basically.
And then let's talk about the specific use cases, because like you were saying, Bitcoin turned out to be the kind of digital gold standard, or gold at least, something that can't move very fast, but it holds value very well, and is sort of tokenized energy in some sense. And then we have some other very programmable money kind of things. Like, what were you first envisioning perhaps as use case for Saito? And then what did you find? Maybe it's not the same as it ended up as. So very curious what sort of the first thought was versus how it's evolved.
Yeah, it's a good question, because it's funny for me, and again, it's that earliness thing. One of the first things I ever saw Bitcoin do was Bitcoin Graffiti, an old app back in the day, which someone's actually built a version of for Saito, which was just allowing you to send a message that added, pixels to a wall.
Right.
And you could do that across the blockchain. And the point was, to me, what was immediately evident, again, to sort of break it down to its pieces, I'm sending information that's publicly available and uncensorable. That's what occurred to me when I saw that. And there's no owner. I was really intrigued. Having watched Linux take over the data center, I was really intrigued into sort of, could you have a network that could achieve the same thing? Right. So it wasn't like money to me seems to be an important aspect of that, because you have to be able to pay for things within the network, and not just the services and so forth in the network, but things you might want to do with the network needed their own payment system as well. It needed to be secure. So blockchain brought all of those things together. But to me, it was definitely a network. And so I was always thinking about cases where you might want to communicate, whether that's email type communication, singular message payloads, or encrypt data that you put somewhere else, and then someone else can pick it up and decrypt it, etc. And how you could remove middlemen from that process. Because I think there's kind of an analogy to the Saito mechanism itself, which is how web businesses work, where you end up with these sort of gatekeepers who siphon out money because they've got some position in the network they can leverage to rent seek, basically.
Right.
And so for me, it was always just about like, how can we take that victory we had with Linux in the data center and do it to communications, right? and money came with that for me as a side effect, a useful one and a very important one, because I could see that's going to lead the way. It's the obvious punch, like it's the obvious killer app, like email was. But I also always felt like in the end, when I use my phone, I spend, I hope, less than a tiny percentage of my time in my banking app, and that's how blockchains, in my mind, the money part of blockchains would be like.
Right.
Yeah, you send money, but like, how much time do I spend sending money to and fro? What I'm really interested in is communicating freely, or sending and receiving data, or playing games, or whatever it is that I want to do. And so you get kind of semi-use cases like, Vitalik's sort of driving force was just like, it's so unfair that the gaming companies actually own all of this stuff we've worked hard for in the virtual world. I want to own it. Hence tokenization, which is, a huge thing that I think, the EVM side of things bring to the table. Saito is not an EVM chain, so that's not our, bag. That's not what we're specifically setting out to achieve. And we'll kind of get a bit more into why and how later, I think, because there's some interesting stuff there.
Yeah, no, very interesting. And I think like one of the things that I wasn't aware of. So I think like for me, mostly been like in the Multiverse X, Elrond, Solana, sometimes ETH, sometimes some of the newer things. Obviously, Bitcoin was also my start, but like a few years later, which really feels like a century later. But one thing, the first time that we encountered each other again, like I had bought Saito, I think in 2021, I think. Purely like was curious about it, read the white paper, invested a little bit, but then like, as you know, 99% of my investments, never really looked at it again. We'll do so at some point, but again, that's the financial side. I was always interested in sort of the utility side, and then when we started talking, the first time we actually had a call, it was through the Saito Network, and I was like, I had no idea. And it's really cool. Like we were looking at ways of making it work with this. You even have a streaming service, which is very interesting, like literally decentralized streaming via the blockchain as sort of a native integration. So really curious what sort of use cases you ended up with, and what has been sort of like working, and where you see this developing as well for Saito.
Yes, I mean, we started with a very, very primitive email client just to show people you could send messages on a blockchain, like of substance, like arbitrary size. So it's another thing about Saito, the message size isn't limited. You can pay for as much messages you want to pay for. It's going to get expensive if you send a Wikipedia in a transaction. We started with email. We then went on to games, because for us, the goal was, I think, what people call Web3, but it was peer-to-peer. It had to be peer-to-peer. If you had like intermediaries that could control the flow of data or information, then you really weren't succeeding. So there are a bunch of programming and cryptographic challenges we needed to bring into the kind of application suite. And games are a great way of doing that, because they give you something interesting enough to bother with that you're invested in. But they don't, they're not critical. So if you're writing your document and something breaks, you get furious. If you're in the middle of a game, it's annoying, but you haven't lost much. And that was a great way for us to do things like, the great example is mental poker. Like, how can two people play poker across the internet if they've never met and they don't have a central server that's managing the cards? So proper trustless cryptographic way of doing card dealing between two people. It's possible. We implemented it. And there's a bunch of stuff like that. So if you look across the app that we have, there's actually examples of each of the kind of problem set you're going to have. How do you do data like where Twitter has, central server? How do you do feeds and streams of tweet-like information between peers? So we've got sort of a crowd-based system where your moderation stuff are based on who you know, and that's where you get your content from. It's much more of a community type of a situation than, Twitter is the gatekeeper and we're all the receivers. So we built all of those things out. Another great example, and I think one of the things we get a lot of usage out of, that's just some of it's like totally not blockchain people or anything. It's just people who want to use the service because it's good, is the call service, which is just getting rid of that middleman, which is Zoom or whoever's providing the infrastructure like this, and saying, well, if you're both on a universal broadcast blockchain, that means I can send you a message and you can send me a message back. And if we can do that, and we know that the keys, we can verify that the messages from a given key are always from that key, then we can do some key exchanging. We can encrypt our transactions, interactions, and then we can start streaming, because we can also use that tool to find each other. So all of the things that Zoom does for you, which is like help you transfer your encryption keys, help you find each other on the internet, etc., are possible over a blockchain. And that's really just the difference, is you're using the blockchain to do that stuff, to hook up and secure the connection. Once you're connected, it's peer-to-peer. It's obviously not on a blockchain. You can't get bandwidth on a blockchain. But also, why would you want to? The point is more that you've got a secure way of interacting with people on the internet that doesn't have any little, chinks in the armor or anything like that, where rent-seeking forces can come in and start wedging their way in and say, well, okay, I'll provide you this little service, but then you'll be dependent on me, and so then I can start, demanding your data or charging a fee, and then censoring you or doing whatever I like because I'm the gatekeeper now.
Would encourage people to try this out, actually. Like, what is it, syto.tech? I think you can easily find the the video call function. It really looks like,
there's a link from there. Saito.io/video call gets you there directly.
It's super cool. Works very, very well. I was shocked. I had no idea that's what you've been building. Again, it's so interesting to kind of like find some projects and then revisit them years later, and they're still around doing cool stuff. So I was super, super happy to actually do that. Shall we look? I saw a comment earlier that was like this. I'll bring it up here. Which said, looking forward to the chess match. So we
That's
have
the bait and switch. There is no chess match. We just have chess match.
We have a chess match. I think we have something quite interesting, and you can actually showcase a little bit what you've been talking about here for before we jump into that. And then you can also show something new that is coming to Saito. And I'll bring up your screen here as well, so we can all sort of see
so
what that looks like.
There's new stuff. So this is Red Square, which is our Twitter-like microblogging platform. What did they call Twitter back in the day? Basically short messages. So you can see, that's actually YouTube being Web 2 and blocking the old video for this. But yeah, basically this is just a Twitter-like platform. What's cool here is, again, this is all peer-to-peer. It's all decentralized, so there's no like threshold here. It's on a web page, but the messages go peer-to-peer across the blockchain to anyone who wants to receive them, and you could build a third-party client that has nothing to do with this website and still communicate. But I think for today, the cool thing is we may as well, I think, throw to the chess match. And one thing I can show you here is, I think we'll play, what do we want to play in terms of time?
Up to you.
Should we do, let's do 10 minutes.
Let's do 10 minutes at least. Not because
do a 3 or 5. Let's do 5 on a move.
Sounds good.
But what's really cool that we can do here is, if you notice here, everyone, you can't see my mouse, of course, we can put an EGLD stake on this game. And that's because this last week or two, we've enabled support for EGLD on the Saito network. That means real EGLD transactions can be transmitted across the Saito blockchain. So in this case, what I will do is I'll be very generous and I'll stake an EGLD on the game, and I'm going to let you stake nothing. This is a really cool. It's a really cool feature. What I like about this is it's great for outreach and stuff, because you can say to someone, throw an invite up on Twitter or whatever and say, come and take my money, and introduce someone to your ecosystem, introduce someone. And if they win, or if you let them win, they'll end up with a little bit of coin, and that's a great way to get them interested.
If I win that, I'm going to challenge as many people in chess until I get beaten.
So I think you've got a laptop.
Yes, just in our chat here, if you want to.
So you can just click on that chess EGLD game invite if you go to Red Square, or I'll send you the.
Yeah, send me the link.
The link in. Yeah, I'll just send you. You can also send a direct link, obviously. There you go.
Okay, let's hope my video doesn't collapse. I hope it's still visible, but okay. Yeah. We are, I think.
Saito. Yeah, so we should see that. We should see that kick in a sec.
Okay. Open player slot. I'm gonna join the game. I'm in match 0 EGLD. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't have any.
That's all right. That's all right. If you win, you'll end up with some.
Game is ready, and it's starting. Let's see what that looks like. Perfect. I'm playing black.
So you can
the
see
game is on.
It's got 2 EGLD in it. Game is on. Oh yes, I need to actually start thinking about chess.
Oh wow, I like the sound effect. And you guys put the Multiverse X logo, or the
it's again partially just to let people know what's going on, and also you don't forget that you're actually playing.
Yes, of course. Oh, does this happen basically when you stake in EGLD on the game? It automatically brings up the logo?
Yeah. Yes, it does.
Very interesting.
I've got to stop trying to play on the. Oh, sorry, that was a chat message. Sorry. I've got to stop trying to play on the board that I'm looking at the screen. I'm clicking on the shared screen. Like, why can't I use my knife?
Okay, so what's your like? Obviously, you have some poker background. It sounds like.
I mean, that's always just played for fun. I'm not particularly good, and I don't know this opening at all. So I worry I'm going to blunder into something horrible, and you're doing something clever over here with your
I don't
with your queen side. Push him out there just so I got some options.
But I think like one thing that's interesting in general about these things, like about games in general and how they relate to blockchain. Obviously, game theory and formal logic. We were talking about this earlier, right? As your background, this is something that's so relevant to just the design of incentives, incentive mechanisms, and all of that. Was that something that sort of like you already studied? Like, was that an interest in your studies already? Is that something that kind of developed once you started looking at blockchain systems and things like that?
It was definitely an existing interest. I mean, so like I did formal study in like game theory and stuff like. So obviously, any philosophy student who hasn't studied the prisoner's dilemma isn't a philosophy student,
right?
Not a real one. So obviously you kind of start there. You have done formal training in that space, but then also it becomes really important when you do anything in tech as well, because you're trying to think about it's not always people, right? Sometimes the game theory is around resources or something in a given system, like how they play off against each other. But it's definitely important in those dynamics I was discussing earlier, where we were talking about the the kind of how the consensus mechanism needs to be self-supporting, and it can't have any states it gets into where it's lopsided and it leaks. And so you need a constant set of equivalent to prisoner's dilemmas, where it's just in nobody's interest, like to attempt to cheat. Or where cheating ends up giving people money is another great one. So it's like you can censor people, but you have to hand over cash, and exponentially more cash. Most people will tolerate that because you're funding, if nothing else, their alternate form of getting their message out.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. By the way, like for all the viewers, what usually happens during these games, and it's just sort of the
curse trying to distract me
of this format is it's quite hard if you haven't tried it, you should. To play chess and have like a normal conversation, especially about like more, let's say, substantial things. And so like there's always a little, let's say, delay between speech and play here. Don't mind us. Or just
attempting to think.
Attempting to play and think at the same time, and talk about prisoners' dilemmas and other philosophical problems.
Other blockchain related things. I'm not sure I like what you've done here.
And blockchain related issues. This is it's an interesting position.
Very interesting position.
I'm quite happy.
I'll do that just because I don't like this. I shouldn't give up the file, but
yeah. I don't know. I thought I had some good moves, but play some reasonable stuff.
Yeah, that's not nice. That's encouraged me to get back onto this row anyway.
I'm always encouraging people to try new things.
Branch out. Put the queen way out there. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing here actually. So what do I?
One of my tactics is to play the kind of e4 openings I know until I can put us into somewhere that's like genuinely very little chance anybody knows what they're doing, because that's leveling the playing field a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think my queen belongs where I just put it, but it's a place on the chessboard. It's a legal move.
It is a place on the chessboard. It's a legal move. Let me see what I get for doing that.
Wow. Reckless. Just reckless. Or maybe not. Maybe it's just a pawn. I was planning on something.
That's it. I'm going to trade material for victory here.
Yeah.
It's a Soviet tank commander's battle plan. Right? It's not very sophisticated, but it works.
Okay, let's see now. Let's start with this.
Yeah, I did quite like having those. Did quite like having those guys paired up there. That was nice.
Yeah, but I don't know if I gained much here. And let's see how stable this is.
It's hard to say. Yeah, this is what I'm not like a super fan of.
But I don't know how stable. Like it's not. There's some complications. Your knight isn't. We're not sure what your knight is doing, frankly. But now this is starting to look uncomfortably good for white here for no real reason. It's very sad. Oh my goodness. Oh no. I think
It's not there.
Yeah. And we're trading it. This is like, this can also happen. The excitement. We're now in some sort of technical end game, which also interesting. Let me go here. Always posing problems is always good.
Yeah, having a rando mate threat is usually a good idea.
Do you have one though?
No, but I mean, just like with anyone who's got a king on the back rank, it's like
Shit, I'm missing something. Wait, I just gave you. Why did I do that? I completely.
Not.
Why did I think I could take your rook for free if you did that? Now we're really. This is like. Wow.
This is super technical from here.
This is exactly. This is a little bit. The fans are not getting the excitement they've bargained for here. No, but when did you start? Did you play chess in school or anything?
I played against my father for many, many, many years with very little success.
Wow.
I misplayed that. I'm not sure I could have kept that, but anyway.
The pawn? Yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
You could have kept this.
Oh, I'm an idiot. Sorry, that I just blundered horribly.
Still probably okay-ish. Given my weird pawn structure. But yeah, I'm always curious. Like for me, I actually didn't get into chess until like quite late. I started playing when I was in my 20s, and only because my friend beat me too many times, and I got really upset. And I was like, I can't be this stupid. But chess is really, really hard. And
yeah,
there there are many ways to lose a chess game a lot of times, when your opponent is even just a little bit stronger than you are. But let's talk a little. Ooh, look at that move. Very clever. Very clever. I missed that completely, didn't I?
well, it's also not that great. It has some advantages and some disadvantages. It stops you just swapping willy-nilly.
Yeah. What was that? Oh, right. So obviously this is kind of exciting. The first time that you're able to use EGLD on the Saito chain, right? How did that whole integration come about? What were the discussions? How long has that been going on? Because I was looped in quite late, and then we decided to sort of like have a fun way of making this a bit of an event. But what led to this?
Yeah, so I mean, we've had a very long positive relationship with the EGLD community. It's genuinely been what, 3 years, and it's always been, you know, we first, there was a few kind of key people I think in the EGLD space, Wesley Kress amongst them, who kind of cottoned on to what we were doing, got interested, and what we noticed was a big difference between a lot of other communities where people came over very open-minded, were interested in what we were doing, and there was a good repartee. We long winter in between as well, but we hadn't really done much more with the partnership since we sort of, you know, connected and people started, the two communities started noticing each other, and so we thought we just it was actually, I think, Maxime in the community who kind of bumped it. There'd been a bit of to and fro about it wouldn't be too hard to support EGLD. I'm just wondering if I do what I'm thinking of doing or not. It's not really a good option for me here.
No, I don't know. You maneuvered a little bit too much there.
Yeah, I'm now kind of maneuvered into a not very good place.
But this must still be fine, I think.
Is it? I have to do
Or
that.
maybe it's not. Yeah.
It's not, because you get past me with the other pawn. There's nothing I can do. I blundered with that. I need to go back. Fortunately, it's on video. I can check it out. Actually, it's on chain too. I could grind through the block.
Yeah, that was a question. So these games on Saito are like actually played or recorded on chain? How much of it is actually on chain?
So yeah, the cool thing, and this is where something, I mean, it helps sort of explain the partnership too, right?
Right.
This is going to hell in the handbasket right now. I can make you sweat a little bit, but it ain't gonna happen. I can't move there. Don't be silly.
We're getting a lady.
Yeah. It's you didn't take my pawn. It's just beneath you at this point.
Yeah, I don't need your pawn. I can take it at will.
Yeah, you can just do that. But yeah, so one of the big things and one of the reasons a partnership like this can work is that we, with a Saito transaction, the Saito blockchain is not permanent; it loops, and it has a function called automatic transaction rebroadcasting, which is there with a set of rules to make sure anything important, like monetary transactions, can't fall off the chain. Right. So it means that you don't have to be circumspect about putting stuff on chain. Obviously, there are fees, and so in that situation, you know, you've got to decide whether it's worth doing. And we could be like a video call. We could just send these directly now that we've set up the game and we've got all the cryptography in place. The chain's useful because it gives people a way of reconnecting if they need to. There you go.
Waiting to receive one EGLD. That's
yep. So it's been sent. So if you
So now I want to rematch
nine.
you, and I want to be the person staking the 1 EGLD. How can I do that?
I'm not sure if the rematch function lets you do that, or if it just sets us up again. So
Okay, let's see.
I haven't actually tested that. So yeah, I just lost my. Oh.
Great success.
Yeah. If you wanted to challenge me, you could just go back to the arcade interface and do that.
Okay.
Or just return to Red Square.
I go to, wait, this goes full screen. Let me share my screen, and then
yeah, I can walk you through it.
Yeah, walk me through it. Walk everybody through it.
Yeah, it's true.
So
okay,
share screen, Saito chess, share. Can this be seen on stream? Yes, looks good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm here. Oh, here, this is where I go. I have now 1 EGLD. Let's see. You have EC, ETH, Saito as well. Very cool.
Yeah.
I go to Red Square.
Yep, you can go to Red Square or the arcade itself. So I don't know if you navigated there. Did you click that?
Hang on. Yep. Arcade.
Either one will do. Yep, so it'll bring out the arcade. So you can then just click on chess.
Yes.
Top corner.
Create game.
Create a game.
We'll do.
So you can
5 minutes.
So you can put in a lightning.
5-3.
Yeah, 5-3 is good.
Black and create public invite.
No, so if you
go, anybody can challenge me.
No, that's all right. That's all right. It's no. I mean, it's the issue is you didn't click on. You can actually add the EGLD stake in.
Oh, right. Well. This is the main thing.
So let's just accept that. I'll accept that invite, and I'll show you.
No. We're doing this right.
Well, no, you could have clicked on the. Let's just start the game, and then in the game we can agree to a stake. So if you just click on crypto and then EGLD.
Crypto, EGLD.
One. Sorry, community. It has to be less than 1 because you won't have the fee. Yeah.
0.99.
Yes, I'm in. I clicked the button that said yes, I'm in.
Oh, but now you've also staked 0.99.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. High stakes game.
High stakes game.
Our children will look on this with shock and horror that their antecedents should splash their e-gold around like this.
Okay, I'm gonna play a different opening. See what happens here. Okay. But yeah. Talk more about the partnership. Obviously the things that kind of can be done.
So I mean, one of the big things for us is obviously this is a great way to announce. We're really keen on the fact that, and I was really happy when I started talking to people in. So we were reconnecting, and I started to reopen the communication channels that were kind of really of a mind, really in agreement about. Let's do something that the community actually gets something out of. Like let's not do some kind of paper, poster partnership that doesn't have any actual, usage. Let's go first to, something that really gets community activity, and let's work from there. So with EGLD enabled, we can start off with some light things like obviously this. People can use it for outreach because you can start that, we can start a game and invite people and stake, as I was saying before. We'll also probably just kick in and look at having EGLD game nights. Right? It's a really cool way of getting people involved. And opening them up to all the other things we can do. And then we've got a bunch of things like we'll look at how we can use things like the video call, etc., make that available to the EGLD community, add features like crypto transfers, etc. I mean, this is for everyone's information, just so people aren't confused. This is I'm clicking and you're sharing. If you click on the hamburger menu up in the corner, that's an EGLD wallet. You better back it up at some point, which is super easy.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So like I could send from the regular Multiverse X wallet to that. You could push this EGLD back into another wallet or onto an exchange, whatever you wanted to do. You've got history, etc. So it's a wallet. but it's super easy. Like you ended up with this wallet without having to initiate anything, download software.
Right. Yeah.
And so we see it as, obviously it's not super secure right now in the sense of safe because it's not going to get broken into, but it's not backed up yet, and that's obviously not a great idea if you've got large amounts in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of open to the communities, etc. Obviously, I'm gonna push, and I think from your side, I see a lot of eagerness to get involved, to get people involved, get things happening. But we'll also then support community activities if people want to build on top of, or add features, etc. So I think we can see a future with all of the tokenization, etc. We've got EGLD here now, but there's a lot of goodness in that EVM land that I was sort of foreshadowed before, where NFTs and so forth. If people are building things that could really use this sort of quick web UI, etc., that's not got a web 2 kind of infrastructure holding it back, to do things with NFTs or create new games or whatever, then we'd really love to get involved in supporting that and letting people build in this ecosystem.
That means also, so like right now, obviously EGLD now is natively integrated into the Saito blockchain, meaning that it can be used for basically building anything on top of Saito as well.
Yeah, that's right.
As like, yeah, any games that sort of use the arcade or stuff like that, or is there more like things that you see as like straightforward or sort of like I don't want to say trivial, but like obvious use cases? Oh, don't tell me. Are you there, Richard? Have I lost you? I think I'm like, let's see. Now I'm last time we did this, my internet went down.
Sorry.
Okay.
No, that was actually my
Okay,
my machine. It had to kick into a very heavy cryptographic exercise, updating itself because it's gone midnight here. So
I see.
It's doing its 5 minutes past midnight. It set off. I just stopped it. It's doing a big encryption job and backup. Oops, sorry about that.
No problem. I'm glad you're still with us. My last question was like, is there anything sort of like we mentioned integrations into the arcade thing? Like, does this sort of like, what kind of use cases do you see being built on top of, as examples? You were talking about games already. Is there other sort of straightforward, obvious things?
I mean, there's things with ideas we've had and things we've got in the works. Like obviously, it's
also
quite
make sure you don't lose on time here.
Oh yeah, I need to play. Okay, what's something safe I can do? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll wait for a minute here to just get back in the groove.
Yep. Yeah, so I think there's lots of other things that are possible, like adding tipping or pay for video conference functions. So you could be a lesson or it could be anything like that. Obviously,
Oh, Richard, there's some your computer might be doing heavy lifting again. Let's see. Is my image, can somebody in the chat tell me if I'm still here and around and clear? That would be helpful. It's interesting to know when the cryptography kicks in. I can somewhat hear you. Yeah. Okay. Now you're back.
Yep. Yeah. No. I should be back. Yeah. It's I'm just gonna double check and there's any tabs that may not be needed. Okay. You should move so that I don't kill you on time by bothering.
Okay, thank you, Maxime. I'm still here. No. That's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go back. Use cases, gaming, tipping, streaming. Is that something where like
yes, it's kind of easy to forget all of the different features we have. Yeah, we could. In streaming is another huge one. So we've got the Swarmcast feature, which is pure peer-to-peer streaming. So we've got the ability to have that integrated with any EGLD features you want as well. So that could be another thing where people could share live performances or anything like that.
Okay, meaning actually, like it reminds me. I don't know if you followed the Elrond ecosystem at the time, but we had an experiment called Kavari, which sort of had this idea of being waiting to receive.
Yeah.
Oh, what happened? For me, it still shows that you have time. Did you run out of time?
I did run out of time.
Oh, not on my screen.
I think it was because of that glitchiness when you got held up.
This is what it looks like on the receiving end. So it just settles in on the blockchain.
Yeah, so it's polling. Yeah, it's just polling to see when it's actually provably received, and then it'll
received here. And now I can. Now I have to back up this account. Well, look at that. This is all going back to the community, of course. Where would I go to put this seed phrase, or how do I back up this thing?
Okay, so we've got a couple of things. If you go to account, you can use this as a backup wallet function there. That allows you to encrypt the wallet and send it on the blockchain back to yourself, which is one way of securing them, which also then gives you recovery. That's really useful for the sort of a light wallet that has about this much money in it, where you might want to then, you could just send it onto the blockchain and then log in somewhere on another computer and grab that wallet, because it's essentially stored for you on the Saito chain. So you could back up there, or you could obviously just grab your private key underneath that. So
okay,
backup wallet. Yep.
Amazing.
Yep.
Thanks for that walkthrough. I'll get us out of here so we can finish the chat without distractions. Thank you so much for the games. Really appreciate it.
That's all right.
Again,
I feel like I don't have any excuses. I just blundered.
You got robbed by the connection. It wasn't you, Richard. It wasn't you. You should the first game. Honestly, you should have won there. I messed up completely as I tend on these streams.
Yeah, it was. I had that 2-point advantage and I frittered it away, not thinking through. I do that. I want to execute too fast, and then it's like.
This is one thing that blockchain, that Bitcoin teaches us, is patience. Wait for your transaction to settle. And
it does. Well, there's also those things where you've done working with the project and stuff. It's you've sent a transaction that's far more money than you're comfortable to lose, and you're like, that if you send it in 10 tranches, something will go wrong and you'll lose money for no reason. But waiting for whatever it is, 6 months payroll for people to clear when you've sent it, and you're like, I didn't paste in the wrong address, did I? It's like,
that was my first time like thinking about or like using blockchain was for poker. And I had to send money to like an online casino that I want. It was legal, by the way. I just want to mention that here. But like that thought, it was entire Bitcoin, and it wasn't that much. It was like 2,000, 1,000 or something. It was a substantial amount, but like not a huge amount. But it was just like, no, like I can't, I'm sitting here. I have no idea where this went. I just punched in like however many letters and numbers. And I don't know what happened. This really cannot be the future of money, or anything for that matter. And so like, that's really what got me interested in like what was behind that, and started reading all the white papers, and then at some point including Saito's. So very cool to see like how all of that, how far that has come.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that was similar for me. Like the first time, because I had accounts on a couple of Chinese exchanges because they were very early, and then I got one in Australia. And the first time I actually did something I needed to do with crypto, like where I sent myself Bitcoin to the exchange in Australia, and I'd had that hooked up to my bank account. So I sold it and I put it in my bank account and I paid off my credit card. And I was like, it suddenly goes from that kind of, this isn't the future of anything, to wait a minute.
Yeah.
I didn't touch the sides there. Like there was no permissioning on that except for the bank bit at the other end. Right. And then, realizing also, like if you could buy and sell Bitcoin directly from people, which would happen back in there, because there was a while there where Beijing had a lot of people who earned money in Bitcoin. They didn't have a lot of ways to off ramp it, right? So they were being paid by like guys who worked at Bitmain got paid in Bitcoin, and they didn't necessarily have great ways to. So they would love it if you'd like pick up their bar tab and they could send you 3 BTC or whatever. It wasn't that much. It was 0.03 BTC or whatever it was. And so you actually that got you thinking, wait, this works. You can do stuff with this. And I hope we get the same thing for people still with the video call, where it's not quite the same, but there's a penny drop moment where they're like, I didn't ask for any permission. I didn't log in. No one got up in my grill. No one told me I had to do anything, create an account, nothing. I just went straight on. And then you can realize I've been in this thing for 2 hours chatting and there's no restriction. There's no, and that I think is again, the simplicity with which I can just set up a game with the wage or something. Right? There's no one's, that's completely legal in basically every jurisdiction. But it's hard to do, right? Yeah. It's hard to do because people who gatekeep the versions that aren't legal are happy to overreach and have more power, right? They're happy to get into your computer and tell you what you can do with it. Right. And I think that's something I'm kind of proud of with some of the stuff we've built. And then I hope we give people that feeling, because I think that's, there's obviously a lot of speculation, a lot of hype and stuff in the space, but that's what gets the true believers who stick around and who really contribute something to the space, is that they realize this is important and it starts to feel important. And when you go back to using gate-kept Web 2 systems, you feel constantly uncomfortable. It's like, I've got to pay this, or I got to, or they won't let me in. It's like just even entering the system, which is pretty slick. There's this process from having to like, yes, I'm good enough. Yes, I exist. Yeah, I've got an account over there. You can trust that.
Right.
Rather than here is the thing, use the thing, which is really, a far better experience. So.
Yeah, no, very interesting. And I think, great conversations. Really cool to get sort of this partnership underway in a very playful way. Thank you for agreeing to do that. And again, like I'll figure out, maybe I'll put some wagers out there, just like public games or something in the next few days, where I'll just put on a stream and anybody can accept.
I think
we'll play.
I might do the
money is gone.
Yeah, I think I might do the same with hitting up the X Alliance, group, just tweet at them when I feel like a game. There's some other games, so I might throw up some other invites and see if anyone takes. Because it really is quite fun. And it's a great way to kind of bump into and have a system. And then I think for everybody as well, just watch all the various channels from Multiverse X Alliance, Saito Official, etc. Because I think we'll keep going with this sort of flow of playful interactions, maybe some game nights, that sort of thing. We'll see what gets people going. And then at the same time, we'll be looking at what else we can do to kind of build heavier community usage and get some really cool apps out as well, I think.
Yeah, looking forward to it. This was very educational. I loved the sort of deep dive and insight on like how Saito got started and how you got started, how going from philosophy to Linux to Bitcoin to like distributed.
Well, one of the things I'm proudest and happiest about is I think Red Square, like our Twitter clone, I suppose, has by density an awful lot of just ridiculous philosophy memes or actual serious like philosophy posts. There's someone posted something on AI and philosophy of mind today. It was Mark, I think. But I've sort of bookmarked it in my head to go and watch it later because it's actually very interesting. So love the Saito community for that, and I've noticed similar traits in the EGLD Multiverse X community. So kind of keen to go and meet more people in that space and get stuff flowing.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, with that, I know it's super late for you also, so thank you so much for past midnight and indulging me here. Really appreciate everything. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for tuning in. It was very fun. This was Richard Parris, the co-founder of Saito Network. We now have a live integration between the Multiverse X blockchain and the Saito blockchain. So it is natively integrated. You can send money from your Saito or EGLD from your Saito account to another Saito account, as well as BTC, obviously Saito and ETH, I believe. So there's some ways of interacting with it. We'll play some chess in the future and some other arcade games as well. So yeah, thank you for this. Thank you, everybody.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Until next time, this was Chess and Chat. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
See you.